Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Christy. The ice storm continues here in Oklahoma. So once again, dogs in the house, you may hear them. Steve is in the house, of course. If you guys are new here, I have a chicken in the house. He is a bantam rooster, which is a miniature chicken, basically. He was attacked. He almost died. I nursed him back to health, but he did lose his feet. So now he lives in his own little coop inside the house where he is safe from being attacked again. So yes, sometimes you hear Steve in the background and it just is what it is. My husband is working at home again today, so you're likely to hear just about anything in the background. Alright, so that's kind of a short introduction to my channel. It is February 2nd. I can't believe that we're already into February. That means that today is all about this guy, Punxsutawney Phil, who apparently saw his shadow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. And I can tell you that here in Oklahoma, that's really not what we want to hear. I don't know if our local groundhog saw his shadow or not, but Punxsutawney Phil did, and that seems to be the one that everybody looks to for their information. It is also Rheumatoid Awareness Day, and my body decided to celebrate by having a rheumatoid arthritis flare. My hands have been bothering me for the last 2 days, and now my knees are killing me. It hurts to walk, and it's probably not because of the holiday today that my body did this. It's probably to do with the weather and the stress that the weather has brought into my world. And on a lighter note, it is National Brown Dog Day. So, Odie, Chief, Pablo, Chewy, and Bandit, it is your day today. Happy Brown Dog Day to all of the brown dogs out there in the YouTube streets. I hope you have a great day with lots of head pats and treats. Alright, moving on to why we're really here. The conflict of interest. Does it really exist with Ann Taylor in the Idaho 4 case? I am going to lay everything out for you and let you make up your own mind. Now, to start off with, let's look at this picture. Now, if you were to see this picture, we've got Ann Taylor, we've got the Nothing Burger, Maddie, and Xana. Now here, yeah, you could say conflict of interest, right? I mean, if she was somehow directly tied to those 2 victims, there's no way that she could represent the Nothing Burger, obviously. But if I show it to you like this, now do you see the conflict of interest? It's not quite as clear, right? Not as clear cut as the last picture. Because now we've got Ann, the Nothing Burger, we've got Corey Mogan, Hat Rock, we've got Ben Mogan, and we've got Kara, sometimes Nordington, lately Kernodle. So if I were to show you this picture, it might not jump out at you, right? It might not jump out at you that there's a conflict of interest here. So why is everyone making this such a big deal? Let's look at it this way. So now you have the tie. You've got Ann Taylor, you've got Corey Mogan, Hat Rock, and you've got Ben Mogan, and then that is the tie to Maddie. That's what connects Ann and Maddie. But how much does that really connect them? Here, we've got the tie. We've got Ann again. We've got Kara, sometimes Northington, now Kernodle, apparently, and Xana. So Kara is the link between Ann and Xana. Now, it probably doesn't look great to you, right? It probably doesn't look great to you. But we're going to talk about why it might not be as big of a deal as some are making it out to be. So Ben Mogan is Maddie's bio dad. Corey Mogan Hatrock is her stepmom. She's married to Ben. Apparently they have been married since August of 2020. Ann Taylor represented Ben Mogan, the dad. In September of 2020. And this was for 2 misdemeanor drug charges, which he ended up taking a plea agreement for. He pled guilty to 1 charge and was sentenced to 90 days in prison. From what I understand, I think it had to do with marijuana. I'm not really sure, but it was 2 misdemeanor drug charges. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, probably not a huge deal, but nevertheless, he was a client of Ann Taylor. Let's see. Move on to, sorry, I'm a little bit out of it today. I don't know why. Moving on to Corey. So Ann Taylor represented Corey Mogan Hatrock, the stepmother of Maddie and Ben's wife, as recently as June of 2022. She was part of her legal team after she was charged with 1 misdemeanor and 2 felony drug counts. She made a deal with prosecutors and entered a guilty plea to 1 of the felony drug counts. The case is closed and there has been no activity since December 28th of 2022. So she was actively representing her at the time of the murders, but since the 28th, there has been nothing going on in the case with Ann and Maddie's stepmom or Ann and her biological father. So the end of the Mogan cases was December 28th, 2022. That is 2 days before Nothing Burger will be arrested in Pennsylvania. He got arrested on December 30th at his parents' house in Pennsylvania. It's 1 week before she becomes the Nothing Burger's public defender. So in this case, it's not quite as glaring, I guess you would say, that there would be a conflict of interest because, yes, she had represented them. Yes, to some extent, I guess you still have the attorney obligations to them, but she was not actively working on a case for them or with them at the time that she takes over for Nothing Burger when he comes back to Idaho. So we're going to get more into where these conflicts could possibly arise, but for now, that is what it is. Now, as far as Xana and Kara, like I said, this is Xana's birth mom. her name is Kara Northington, but as of late, everything has been Kara Kernodle. So Kara Kernodle, Kara Northington, I guess kind of interchangeable, but for the most part, I will refer to her as Kara Kernodle, just because the Kernodle kind of will keep in mind for you who she is attached to, right? Now, Kara has more of a history with Ann Taylor and a current case going on that Ann was involved with. And this is where a lot of the controversy came from. We actually heard about the potential conflict of interest first because of her association with Kara Kernodle. And then later, we found out about her connection to the Mogan cases. So let's talk about Ann Taylor and Kara Kernodle. So she has defended her at least 4 separate times. Most recently is on a 2 felony drug charges that were filed on November 19th. Now, I have heard these are possession charges, and I've also heard that there may be trafficking charges, so I'm not 100%. But we know at least it's felony possession. And she was held on a rather high bond. Somehow, some way, she managed to bond out. I believe it was a $500,000 bond. But this was approximately a week after the murders. She was arrested on these charges. And I'm guessing because Ann had represented her in cases in the past that her case was just given to her again, because she already has this history, this relationship with Kara and her legal problems. So Taylor filed an attorney withdrawal notice in the Kootenai County Court on January 5th, 2022. And we're going to talk a lot more about the significance of that date, January 5th, 2022. Now, Kara says at some point that she had signed a power of attorney over to Ann Taylor to help her get into rehab, to get the treatment that she needs. I'm not exactly sure how all of that works. I assume it was probably with the public defender's office as a whole, not Ann Taylor personally, that it was probably Ann Taylor acting as a representative of the public defender's office. And now that she has withdrawn, there's probably a way that that power of attorney is null and void. I haven't heard a whole lot about how that is being handled or how that would be handled, but it was something that Kara brought up when she was interviewed by Ashley Banfield on News Nation, which that's like a whole nother thing. It was really hard to watch. I don't think it was the best move for them to make. Reminded me a lot of the YouTube community, like, oh, I want to get an interview with her and I want to be the first one to get it out there kind of thing. You can see in the picture, this is taken from that interview. She does not look well. She obviously needs some kind of help. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. It was hard to watch. It was hard to listen to. It was borderline exploitative almost. Yeah. But like I said, that's a whole nother thing. So let's get into this withdrawal. So on the 5th of January, the same day as Nothing Burger's initial appearance in Latah County, she filed this notice of withdrawal, substitution of counsel with the court, and now a Christopher Schwartz is listed as Kara's conflict public defender in the court documents. So he is not associated with Ann Taylor. He is not associated with the public defender's office in any way, shape, or form. He has been brought on. They have these things set up for instances like this where there is a conflict and they need to give it to somebody else. That is why he was given the case. Because by separating Ann and the entire public defender's office as counsel for Kara Kernodle, that should eliminate the conflict of interest. But like I said, we're going to get into potential reasons why a conflict could still arise. But as of right now, Kara is being represented by an attorney outside of Ann Taylor and the public defender's office. And this basically is just saying, State of Idaho versus Kara Kernodle. It's from Ann Taylor, you can see in the corner, and it's regarding substitution of counsel. It says, notice is hereby given that Kara Denise Kernodle's attorney of record is hereby changed. The withdrawing attorney is Ann C. Taylor, public defender, and the new attorney and substitution of record, Christopher D. Schwartz, conflict public defender, whose address is 520 North Government Way, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83814. That was his email. You are hereby notified that any process to be served on the above-named defendant, Kara Kernodle, shall be served upon Christopher D. Schwartz, attorney at law, and it's dated on the 5th of January and signed by Ann Taylor. Okay, so that should handle the conflict, right? Well, here's a few things about the date of the withdrawal. So, we all remember when the chief came out before we knew about the arrest and announced that they were going to release the crime scene at 1122 King Road, and they were going to bring in a company to start cleaning it, to remove like the biohazards and things like that. We all remember that. And this was to take place on December 30th. Well, on December 30th, we all got the big news that there had been an arrest, and it was, in fact, the Nothing Burger. And what we saw happen was this crew at the house was immediately shut down. It was over before it even started. And that was because the team that would be representing the Nothing Burger when he got back to Idaho had filed with the court a motion to preserve the crime scene. And he was being represented in Pennsylvania by a public defender, but that is not who filed for this, because he was only basically his extradition attorney, right? And his criminal defense would be handled in Idaho. And we come to find out that it will also be a public defender in Idaho. So who filed on his behalf? Well, if we look at this, hang on, my computer is not my friend today. If we look at this document, if you look at the top, that's Ann Taylor's name, right? Let me make it a little bigger for you in case you can't see. That is Ann Taylor's name at the top of this document. And I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry. It's a screenshot of the document. And it says in the District Court of the 2nd Judicial District of the State of Idaho in and for the County of Latah, State of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger, motion to preserve crime scene and evidence. Comes now Bryan C. Kohberger by and through his attorney, Ann C. Taylor, public defender, and hereby moves this court for an order directing the Latah County Prosecutor's Office to preserve the crime scene located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, including, I cannot make that out. I know it says outbuildings, vehicles, and good grief. Further, Mr. Kohberger requests the court to order the Latah County Prosecutor's Office to preserve all evidence in its custody or under its control or in control of their agents. Further, Mr. Kohberger requests the court to order the preservation to notify defense counsel prior to any, I have no idea, oh my Lord. Basically, Ann Taylor filed this motion to preserve the crime scene and any evidence that they had. And then it is signed and dated on this 30th day of December. The 30th day of December, she is still actively representing Kara Kernodle. Remember, she did not withdraw until January 5th. So on this day, it would seem there could be a conflict, right? And maybe she hadn't put it together, the name. Xana Kernodle, Kara Kernodle. I don't know. Things were probably moving very quickly at this point, and I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that the conflict was not apparent at this time, and she was just trying to act in the best capacity for her client, in his best interest. So then after that was filed, the court comes back and they grant the order to preserve the crime scene and evidence. It says the court having before it the defendant's motion to preserve crime scene and evidence, there being no objection by the state and good cause appearing now, therefore, it is hereby ordered that the crime scene located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, including the home and outbuildings, trailers, vehicles, and what? Sorry. Shall be preserved, which means the house will be locked. Crime tape will remain. On-site police presence is not required, but we have seen that they have security vehicles still sitting there. The crime scene will remain preserved until February 1st, 2023, or until further order of the court. Now, today is February 2nd. I have not heard anything as of today about what is going on with the crime scene. If it's been released, if it hasn't been released, I have no idea. Nothing has come out. But yesterday, according to this document, it could have been released unless another motion has been put in to extend this longer. And this was ordered on the 30th at 3:59 p.m. So all of this is happening the day of his arrest. He's in Pennsylvania, but all of this is happening back in Idaho, set into motion by his public defender, Ann Taylor, who at the time is still Kara Kernodle's public defender. Let's see. So then she and her team of 4 investigators, they show up at the crime scene on January 3rd. Again, January 3rd. She did not withdraw until January 5th. So at the time that her and her investigative team are visiting the crime scene at King Road, she is still representing Kara Kernodle, whose daughter was one of the victims. So just hours after Nothing Burger's extradition, her and her team show up at the crime scene. They spent about 45 minutes there. They were taking pictures and video footage outside, inside, almost like so they could do a crime scene reconstruction, just really getting their own look, perspective, ideas, maybe evidence, so they don't just have to rely on what they're given by the state. Again, like I said, this is 2 days before she would withdraw. So for now, let's just kind of dive in and look at like who is Ann Taylor. So she is the chief of the Kootenai County Public Defender's Office. She graduated from the University of Idaho with a doctorate degree in 1998. She has been working for the Kootenai County Public Defender's Office since 2004. I beg your pardon. Since 2004. She became the chief public defender in 2017 after the other chief public defender retired. She took on the top job. Now, this is important. She is one of 13 death penalty qualified public defenders in the state of Idaho. She is one of only 13. Now, let's think about Idaho, y'all. Okay, look. It's a pretty big state, right? One of 13 public defenders in the state of Idaho licensed by the State Public Defense Commission to represent persons facing the death penalty. She is the only one in North Idaho. Now, prosecutors have not yet indicated if they will seek the death penalty or not. In Nothing Burger's case, I would say it's very likely they will. So to cover themselves, they probably wanted a death qualified public defender right off the bat so that when he enters his plea, the state has 60 days to say what they're going to do. And you don't want to switch gears, mid-case. Like, she's been working on all this. And all of a sudden, let's say, they're going for the death penalty. Had he had someone that wasn't already death qualified, they would have to replace that attorney with someone like Ann Taylor, and that would have just been a mess. And in this picture, you can see I have 2 counties highlighted. Now, she is the chief public defender in Kootenai County. This case is taking place in Latah County. From what I can gather, it is about an 80-mile drive for her from her office. It would be much further for any of the other 13 to get there. It would probably be several hours. I think that's why she was chosen. It's a logistics thing, plain and simple. So the question has come up, was she forced to make a choice between Kara Kernodle and the Nothing Burger? And we need to look at it for what it is. Public defenders are appointed or assigned clients by the court. It's not a matter of them choosing their client or their client being able to choose them. You are just given who you're given, right? So with there only being 13 death qualified public defenders and her being the closest to Latah County, which you can see in the map. They're right above and below each other. Logistically, I'm sure it's why she was assigned the Nothing Burger. She is the closest death-qualified public defender that would be able to defend him. So when this is going on in Latah County, and they know it is potentially a capital murder, or it is a capital murder case, and that they could be going for the death penalty, who are we going to assign? Well, Ann Taylor is the closest one. Let's give it to her. I feel like that's probably how this all went down. You know, like I said, things are moving quickly at the beginning, and nobody's thinking about potential conflicts of interest necessarily. They just need to get this guy somebody to defend him when he makes it back to Idaho. So the public defender's caseload is very different than a private attorney. They don't have the same freedom to refuse a case because their casework is assigned by the state. So it's not like when you go to a private attorney, you know, they would have the option of saying, look, I am just overwhelmed with cases right now and I'm not going to be able to take yours on. A public defender can't do that. You know, if you've got 40 cases and the court's like, here, have another one. Okay, now you've got 41. That's just how it is. You can't be like, I've got too many, I can't. No, now you just have one more. But there are certain elements that may prevent them from being able to handle a case, and one of those things would be a conflict of interest with the client. So do we have a conflict of interest in this case? So Xana's mom says that she was not notified of the change in her counsel. And she says that she heard about it from a friend who saw it on Reddit. It's unknown if the court tried to notify Kara Kernodle because she is currently on the run with an active warrant. She failed to appear at a court appearance and a bench warrant has been issued for her. So when Ashley Banfield did her interview with her, we see she is in a car that it honestly looked like she possibly could have been living out of her car. I think someone was driving her somewhere, but at the time of the interview, she has an active warrant out for her. She's not turning herself in, but she's talking to the media. It's a whole thing. But I don't know where she might have been, is my point, when the substitution of counsel came about. Maybe they did try to notify her, and wherever they sent this notice to, she wasn't there because, like I said, she's got a warrant out for her, right? I don't know. So she says she feels betrayed by Taylor, and I get that. I mean, I can't imagine, you know, you have an attorney that's representing you, and then you find out that they're not representing you anymore because they're going to be representing the person who is suspected of killing your child. Now, under a normal circumstance, not that this is abnormal, but under a circumstance where you have, let's say, a private attorney. If I had a private attorney that had been representing me for, you know, however many years in however many cases, and then that attorney is like, hey, I'm not going to be able to represent you anymore because I'm taking on this case, and oh, by the way, the person may have killed your child. Yeah, I can see. Is that the washing machine?
Yes.
Sorry, I can say what I thought that was, but it's the washing machine. I could see the betrayal there, right? But the whole attorney-client relationship with public defenders and private attorneys, it's like a whole different thing. So, yes, I'm sure she feels betrayed, because never in a million years would you think you're going to lose your representation because now your public defender is defending the person that may have killed your daughter. I'm sure there is a level of betrayal there. I'm not saying that she's unjustified in feeling that at all. So a former federal prosecutor named, and I'm gonna butcher this name, y'all, Niyama Ramani, says that Kara Kernodle could file a motion to disqualify Taylor from representing the Nothing Burger. The prosecution can file that same motion, or the judge can raise the motion sua sponte, on its own accord. What the heck is sua sponte, you ask? Well, I have your answer right here. Sua sponte refers to actions taken by a court without the prompting of either party in the case. So this would basically be the judge that's presiding over this case saying, hey, I see that you represented, Ben and Corey and Kara, and, this may be a problem. And the judge could say, this is a conflict of interest. You can't represent him anymore. Kara could file, but I don't know if it would do her any good. And if you're on the run for a warrant, are you really going to go to court? Probably not. The prosecution has the ability to do this. And since they have not done this, I can only assume maybe they are not seeing a conflict here. But if this motion were to be filed by Kara, the prosecution, or the court itself, the judge will then decide whether Taylor has confidential information about Xana or Maddie or Kara, Ben, or Corey related to the case. If so, that would constitute an actual conflict, and Taylor would not be permitted to represent Nothing Burger going forward. So, obviously, the optics on this are a nightmare. They're really bad. It looks bad. It sounds bad. I mean, most people are like, how can she do this? But how much knowledge would Ann Taylor have about Maddie or Xana, and how would it relate to the Nothing Burger case? That is a very key question. How much knowledge of the two victims would she have through her representation of their parents? Now, we all have heard the drug angles out there surrounding this case. We've heard, did Dylan wait to call 911 because she called her friends over so they could dispose of drugs that were in the house? We've heard, was this house known for drug activity? Was this like a hotbed of drug activity? People coming there and doing drugs, buying drugs, whatever. We've heard, could the Nothing Burger have visited there previously for a drug-related reason? He's a recovering heroin addict. Did he slip up? Was he using some different kind of drug? Did he go there to purchase drugs? Or did he get them in the area of the house, and then that's why he's spotted in the area and his phone pings in the area? Something to that effect. We've all heard that. All three parents were represented by Taylor on offenses involving drugs in some way, shape, or form. Did their drug offenses have any involvement of Maddie or Xana, though? Not that we're aware of, right? It was just Ben, it was just Corey, it was just Kara. It wasn't, Maddie or Xana involved in these cases at all. Did their offenses have anything to do with any drug activity that may or may not have been going on at the King Roadhouse? Now, that would be an interesting twist. If somehow, their drug offense came from, the drugs that were at the residence, that they were funneling drugs through the residence somehow. Like they were using that residence to sell drugs from, or they had purchased their drugs from there, or, something to that effect. Did their offenses have anything to do with the activity at that house? Probably not. If either of those were true and Taylor has knowledge of that, then there would be a conflict. Doesn't appear to be the case because she'd be off the case by now. If she knew of either of those situations, she wouldn't be representing the Nothing Burger. She couldn't be representing the Nothing Burger. Now, let's say that their charges were not directly linked to the victims, but they had knowledge of something going on in the house or with one of the victims that relates to the murders. But why would that have come up during their time being represented by Taylor? Let's say one of the other roommates was selling drugs out of the house, and Ben or Corey or Kara knew this, and for whatever reason, I don't know what it would be, they told Ann Taylor. And come to find out, somehow like a drug deal gone wrong or whatever is the cause of what happened at the house. Now, if she knew that, that would be a conflict. But like I said, why would that even come up? You're there trying to plea on a drug offense. You just want to, get your sentence and do what you got to do and move on. Why would you just randomly bring up, this girl that lives with my daughter? I don't think so, but maybe. But think about this again. We're going to go back to the differences between public defenders and private attorneys. They have really different relationships with their clients, right? Like a public defender, they're typically very overworked, loaded down with cases, and they're trying to juggle all these different cases and clients at one time. So they don't spend as much time with each individual client. Sometimes they only see the client in court. It's like they got assigned a public defender. They show up to court. Their public defender's there. The public defender's like, hey, I can get you, off with this fine. They're like, yeah, sounds good. And that may be the only interaction they have. And any visit they have with the attorney, with the public defender, is probably very brief and limited to the case at hand, the charges at hand. They don't need to know any more than is absolutely necessary. So they don't have they don't have a lot of time to like really get to know you. Like, you know, oh, you know, tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. What do you like to do for fun? You know, that kind of thing. Public defender does not have time for that. Private attorneys, they're able to spend more time with each client because, you know, they're able to really work the case, and things like that, getting to know details about your client could be important, you know, about your family, about your children, about, you know, your ties to the community. Is there any shady behavior in your family that they need to be aware of that may come up, you know, things like that. I had a friend, he's my son's godfather. He was our attorney until he became state's attorney, and then eventually he became a judge. But we were like best friends. He, like I said, he's one of my son's godfathers. He knew literally everything about my life. Not all private attorneys have that relationship with their clients, but some do. Now, in a situation like that, I could see where maybe they would have confidential information about one of the victims or activities that were going on in the house. But a public defender, I just don't see it. Unless there was a reason for that information to have been brought out. I don't see how it would come up. You know, it's not like you're just sitting there at a meeting and be like, you know, man, you know, my daughter, her roommate is selling drugs and I don't know what to do. No, that's not what you're going to be doing when you're talking to your public defender. Now, if you've got a good relationship with your private attorney, you might be like, this is going on. What should I do about it? You know, completely different. You know, it's intimate is a weird word, but it's a more intimate relationship between a private attorney and a client than a public defender and a client. So, since the parents all had drug charges, if Taylor didn't bring up drug activity, if any can be proven, as a possible motive for the murders, could that be a possible grounds for an appeal? Maybe. So basically what I'm saying is they all had drug charges, right? And when she's looking at how am I going to defend the Nothing Burger, like what can I put out there as like reasonable doubt, possible other motives or other reasons that this occurred that have nothing to do with my client. If somehow drug activity was proven and they want to go down that road and say it had something to do with that drug activity, if she chose not to bring that up as a possible alternate defense for him, an alternate reason for the murders to have happened, because let's say she doesn't want it to tie back to her former clients, right? She doesn't want their past drug offenses to be brought in to this case, then maybe, yeah, that would be a conflict. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think that's going to be a problem in this case. I really don't. But that brings me to my next point. Former federal prosecutor Michael McAuliffe stated that the mere fact that the public defender was forced to choose which client to represent reflects a potential issue of competing loyalties. And I see that. I can totally see that. So this would mean that because of her loyalty to the parents, she would not defend the Nothing Burger to the best of her abilities. So, you know, she's not able to separate out, like, you know, put it in a box that, okay, I had a relationship, you know, I represented these people, you know. If she's focused on providing the best defense for Kohberger, no matter what, then she's doing her job. If she's somehow influenced by her previous relationship with the parents, then yes, that is a conflict. If she's feeling torn, like she's loyal, like, you know, I care about these people, and I can't believe he did this to their kids, and I've got to represent him, but I'm just not gonna really put my heart and soul into it, kind of thing. You see where I'm going with this? If she were to do that, then yes, that would be a conflict of interest. Say that she wouldn't consider certain defense strategies for the Nothing Burger due to the implications that it may have for her former clients, the parents of Maddie and Xana. Like I said, the drug thing. Let's say she doesn't want to consider that strategy because it could implicate Kara, Ben, or Corey. So she's not even going to consider it. That would be competing loyalties, because the only reason she wouldn't consider it is because of her past relationship with them. Let's say that she wouldn't argue against certain evidence that is detrimental to the Nothing Burger because she feels loyalty to the parents. So, let's say that there's a piece of evidence that looks really bad. Let's just say the knife sheath for an example. Now, she, in court, is going to do everything she can to either have it not come in, or if it comes in, she is going to do everything she can to argue that, this means nothing. This is not important. This, has nothing to do with this crime, etc. Now, if she didn't do that, if she was just like, yeah, let it come in. Yep, it's his knife sheath. So, yeah, he was there. It must have been him. Because she doesn't want to see him get away with this, because she doesn't want to defend him against it, because she wants to see justice for her former clients instead of justice for her current client, then that's a problem. That's competing loyalties. If she couldn't remain impartial when trying to negotiate a plea or a sentence for the Nothing Burger. So, for example, she doesn't try to get the deal in BK's best interest or agrees to a harsh deal for Nothing Burger with no argument due to being influenced by her former relationship with the parents. So, let's say it comes down and somehow, some way, they're like, if you plea, instead of life without parole, we'll give you a chance of life with parole. If she doesn't argue, like if the state is like, we're giving him life without parole, if she just says, all right, cool. If she doesn't at least try to say, no, he deserves a chance, he deserves an opportunity, and she's fighting to get him life with parole, with the opportunity for parole. If she doesn't try to get that better sentence for him, then you could say that's a conflict, because she wanted him to be punished because of how she felt about the parents of the victims, right? Or let's say that, something is put out there and she's just like, I think, if they're like, we're going to give him the death penalty, and she's just like, okay, she doesn't try to negotiate, let's say, and say, what about, this? What about that? Why does it have to be the death penalty? If she doesn't try to argue against the death penalty, it's not going to look good. Let's say it was a situation where it was, the state wanted, not necessarily in this case, because I don't think it would be an option, but let's say the state is like, we want to sentence him to 50 years without an opportunity for parole. If she just said, okay, that seems fair, rather than saying, no, I I request that you sentence him to 25 years with an opportunity for parole after X amount of time. You know, there's lots of ways, like, an attorney can argue in your best interest or not fight for you. So if she's not arguing in his best interest, if she's not fighting for her client, it could be said that that is because she has a loyalty to her previous clients, the parents of Maddie and Xana. I hope that made sense. Now, questioning Ben, Corey, or Kara. If they were material witnesses, like they were there and they saw something, right? In this case, I could see, you know, that would be a huge red flag, huge conflict of interest. Like, she obviously is not going to question her former clients, right? But a murdered victim's relatives have a right to be heard in a charged homicide case. If the state files a notice of intent to seek the death penalty, the parents, some who are her former clients, will have a specific right and special standing to be heard in the capital case, including any proposed resolution or plea. It is typical practice for a defense attorney to try to speak with the victims' families in the course of a possible sentencing period to obtain their okay for a life sentence versus the death penalty for their client. You know, they're going to want to talk to the victims' families to plead their case of why you should spare his life, and instead of going for the death penalty, you know, they want to make the victims' families be okay with a life sentence because that's in the best interest of their client. You know, it's better to have a life sentence than a death sentence. And you're going to seek to speak to the family on behalf of your client. So this would mean that Taylor would be speaking to Ben Mogan, Kara Kernodle, and all of the other family members, hoping to get their approval on a life sentence versus death for the nothing burger if it comes to that. This scenario is bad. This is bad all around, right? This to me would represent a huge conflict. Massive conflict. There is no way Ann Taylor can sit down with those family members, some of which were her former clients, and say, I'm hoping to get your approval on life without parole versus the death sentence for the murderer of your daughter. No way. So, if Xana's mom feels betrayed now, imagine the level of betrayal that she would feel during a conversation like that. It would be huge, not just for her, but for Ben as well. But effective representation in a capital case, if it gets to the penalty phase, is going to include an effort to talk to the victims' families. And that is what conflict of interest is all about. Effective representation. Is this where the conflict could lie? In that conversation that would be part of effective representation. Well, hold on a minute, because this is the law and we all know about loopholes, right? So Stephen Gillers, a legal ethics professor at NYU's law school, says there is a practical solution to this scenario. It's a concept called shadow counsel. When a lawyer has a conflict that is relatively minor, that a lawyer may not wish to handle or may not be allowed to handle, the lawyer can ask someone else to do that part of the case. So if we get to the penalty phase in this trial and a discussion with the victim's family is to be had, I can only assume, sorry, I know you hear the dogs in the background. There was just that loud noise outside. That's why they're getting feisty. So if we get to the penalty phase in this trial and a discussion with the victim's family is to be had, I can only assume that Jay Logsdon and Taylor's co-counsel on the case will be the one to handle it. That covers her for conflict. If she's not the one that goes to them and says this, then I think she's covered by the shadow counsel. Legal experts seem to agree that Taylor should recuse herself from Nothingburger's case because it could result in him appealing any result in which he is found guilty. I think... Hang on. Sam. I think he will likely appeal regardless of who his lawyer is. If he is found guilty, he is going to appeal. I don't care who his lawyer is. If he is sentenced to death, he will get what is called the direct appeal. This is an automatic appeal given to everyone sentenced to death. The appeal is made to the state's highest court in which someone can seek an appeal from a conviction and death sentence. In some states, this appeal is mandatory, and in others, it's optional for the defendant. So there will be an appeal. Whether she recuses herself or not, if he is found guilty, he will appeal. Guarantee it. If he is given a death sentence, he will get this automatic appeal. So an appeal is going to happen regardless. And for every legal expert that thinks she should recuse herself, you can probably go out and find one that thinks that everything is okay. And the last thing that I want to bring up is clout. A lot of people have kind of insinuated that, I am so sorry, that Taylor chose the Nothingburger over Kara Kernodle for clout. And she doesn't really need clout as a public defender, right? She's going to be given cases whether she's good, bad, indifferent as an attorney. She's a public defender. She's going to be given these cases, right? But in Idaho State, she already has a certain level of clout. She's proven that she is a good attorney. And I want to bring up this one specific case that really kind of sealed her as a great attorney in the minds of those in Idaho. So she worked on the case of Jonathan Ellington, who was accused of using his car to run over a woman in a road rage incident. He was convicted and sentenced to 25 years. Taylor got that overturned because an Idaho police officer provided false testimony. He lied on the stand. Taylor said that Officer Fred Rice was pivotal in the verdict against Ellington, adding that he had a presence in the courtroom. Rice was accused of lying to the court in relation to the incident, with Taylor representing Ellington throughout. Ellington was later reconvicted of the charges during a second trial after the Supreme Court ruled that Rice lied on the stand. So, a little bit more about who Ann Taylor is. She graduated with her doctorate from University of Idaho in 1998. I told you earlier she has worked at the Public Defender's Office since 2004. She briefly left in 2012 to work in a private practice. Then she came back and took over as Chief Public Defender in 2017 after the retirement of John Adams. She also worked for 5 years in the Kootenai County Prosecutor's Office, so she knows what she's doing. She has worked on both sides, prosecutor, defense. She has worked in the private sector as well as a public defender. She has seen it all, okay? This woman knows what she's doing. So if she wins the Nothingburger case, maybe even if she doesn't win, but she gets some life without parole versus the death sentence, which is considered a win because you spared your client's life, then I guess this would give her a level of clout. Sure. I mean, In this case, it would be more on a national, even international level, rather than just like statewide clout that she got from the Ellington case. But it's only really going to be good for her career if she decides to go back to like private practice or run for like a political office or something, right? If she stays as chief public defender, it doesn't change much for her other than people are going to be like, who's your public defender? Ann Taylor? Oh, she's good. You know, that's really all it's going to do for her. So I don't necessarily see this as her chasing clout. I think it was more of a choice about convenience rather than clout. And what I mean by that is it was easier to get replacement counsel for Kara Kernodle than it would have been to get someone else to represent the Nothing Burger. It all goes back to numbers and logistics. Remember, 1 of 13 death penalty qualified public defenders in the state. And she is the only one in North Idaho where the case is happening. So it's numbers and logistics. You know, Kara Kernodle has your run-of-the-mill drug offense case, right? That probably any decent defense attorney can handle in the same manner that Ann Taylor would. There aren't that many people out there that are able to handle a case such as the Nothing Burgers, where the death penalty could be on the table. Most of the 13 are not in northern Idaho. She is. Numbers and logistics. That's, in my mind, what this comes down to. So, what do you guys think? Is this a conflict of interest, or is this just what happens? You know, do you think she would have some sort of confidential information that relates to this case in some way due to her past representation of Ben, Corey, or Kara? Let me know what you think in the comments, because I think this is okay. I think this is okay. I think it's going to go ahead with her as the attorney. I could be completely wrong. I'm not a lawyer. I do not know all of the ins and outs of these situations, but I am interested to hear your thoughts on the situation and what seemed to look like conflicts early on, you know, in that December 30th to January 5th time frame. But if nothing came of those, then I don't see how anything's going to come out at this point. If you're new here and you like the chaos that is my life and my channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We would love to have you. Give this a thumbs up, please. It helps get it out there so more people can see it and more people can join the discussion that we're having here. And as always, I will see you all in the next one.